Well, potholes are part of South African life, and load shedding tragically increasingly so as well. It's here to stay for the next couple of years at least. So how do you become less reliant not only on Eskom but on your local power utility as well? This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by Inus Dreckmeyr, who is an electrical engineer. He's taken his house off the grid, and Cheryl Labuschagne, who is chairperson at the Parkhurst Village Association. It's a community that wants to do the same. They were emboldened by a project that made them independent of cellular telecommunications providers and Telkom when you introduced fibre to the home. It's a project that has come to fruition now, hasn't it, Cheryl?
Absolutely. The last bit of the infrastructure will be in place by the end of the month, and homes are being connected as we speak. I went live last year.
Fat pipes of data streaming into your homes.
It's fantastic.
Unfortunately, it can't carry electricity, however.
Sadly not.
But what it has done, though, what this fibre to the home project has done is shown how when a community pulls together, what you can achieve. You're now wanting to do that with electricity, with energy as well.
Absolutely. Many people thought we wouldn't get the fibre thing right, much less in under a year. But we did. And again, we've got a number of residents from the community. We've got engineers, we've got architects, and we've got common or garden variety people like myself who are all looking at it from different angles and making our contributions. And it's a very exciting project that will last at least 5 years, and which we're approaching in a modular fashion so that individuals can roll out solutions that help them in the short term, but also looking at longer term, bigger solutions.
I'm going to talk to Inus in just a moment about what I can do in my own home if I want to stay independent of everybody else. But you're talking about Parkhurst is next to a big open space called Delta Park, taking over Delta Park and putting in a wind farm and solar panels. Or are we going to be a little bit more discreet than that?
We daren't do that to Delta Park. We love having Delta Park on our doorsteps, and no, we wouldn't do that. But we are looking at a number of things. For example, we're looking at biofuels and making use of what the restaurants produce and so on. There are a number of open spaces that are not environmentally sensitive, which we can use, but of course we would use them in the most environmentally sensitive way possible. We're looking at water reticulation opportunities, all of those sorts of things. We're looking at mobility. So electric vehicles are something, but they would need to be solar-powered electricity.
Now, have you got
fueled.
the support of the City of Johannesburg? Because one of the theories is, the reason why Eskom doesn't want us to go off the grid is that one day when it's got its act together and is charging 5 million rand a megawatt, then they want us to suck their energy, not have our own. Does the City of Johannesburg support this initiative?
We've started interacting with the City of Johannesburg, especially on the transport and mobility elements. The rest will come later when we understand exactly what is going to be possible in our environment.
Are they, Inus? Now that's important because this is a bold community that's got themselves on fibre. They've got all the information in the world coming in their homes and out of their homes. Now they're emboldened and they want to do the same with energy. Is it feasible?
It can be very feasible. Your approach must just be accurate on that. You must ensure that you understand your end objectives clearly, and that you know exactly where you want to go and plan through the process carefully so that you don't end up repurchasing stuff and reinvesting in equipment.
Because this technology is expensive, isn't it? I mean,
technology is always expensive, so you have to make sure that the technology suits your environment and that you select the correct process of interacting with various resources to get your end result.
Okay, now you took your home off the grid. Your home's off the grid as well. We'll talk about that in just a second, Cheryl. But Inus, you take your home off the grid, and my producers whispered a number in my ear, which is terrifying. Do you live in a palace or in a humble home? 350,000 rand to take yourself off the grid?
It's quite a substantial home. We are a family of 5, and we do enjoy space, and we do have 2 live-ins that form and live off the same energy source as what we do. So it's absolutely been feasible for us to do.
Okay. For the idiot, the person I can't wire a plug. Explain to me in simple terms how I would get off the grid, not be reliant on city power, not be reliant on Eskom, and how I could live in a joyous little bubble bathed in light.
Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to understand the energy that you consume currently, and then the critical part to that is to see how much energy you can then save in that specific environment. And by saving doesn't mean to discomfort yourself in any way. In other words, you want to continue life the way it is, but look at the profile that you have at the moment, and then to match the requirement that you've then planned for with the necessary equipment. There's a number of companies available that would supply the equipment to you, but it's critical that you understand the different technologies.
Is there a huge difference in the technologies? Is there a huge difference in price of technologies? Is it a case of you happy to drive a Golf, or do you want to drive a Rolls-Royce? Is it that sort of comparison?
It is. There's a similar type of comparison, and within each element there's derivatives of the products, and there's activeness that you can have with the grid, where you can use the grid as a backup resource, similar to what you would use a generator or diesel generator as such, and where you can find yourself in a position where you rather invest in the technology that generates the energy than the types of technology that you store energy in. So it is critical to have an approach and make a decision on whether you want to only increase your reliability, or do you want to be fully dependent or not dependent on the grid at all, or do you want to be in a position where you have a combination of those elements?
Cheryl, I mean, you wanted to make yourself less dependent, and you actually took yourself off the grid completely, didn't you?
In terms of most of my electricity needs, absolutely. I simply have to convert my stove to a gas stove, and then pretty much I'll be there. But Parkhurst is taking exactly that approach. We're saying that a diesel generator, for example, is really putting a band-aid on a finger that's been cut off and trying to stop the bleeding with that. We're saying look at this as an infrastructural spend, look at this as a long-term spend to get yourself away from the grid. You can have the grid as your backup, as I do, but really our intention is, first of all, to educate people, to have them reduce their consumption. A light is not a light. You can have LEDs or
no,
not.
absolutely, but there's absolutely no better education than really analysing your electricity consumption to realise that, hold on a second, the downlighters, the halogens that you installed 5 years ago when electricity was affordable, sap a lot more energy than an LED. And not LEDs, a cold white light. LEDs have evolved as well. There has been a lot of evolution in this space, Inus.
There is, and when implementing these energy-saving devices, you can really save a substantial amount of energy, and that decreases the investment that you need to make to get yourself to a less dependent point on the energy grid.
What information resource are you using, Cheryl? And are you going a little bit of taking a dartboard, blindfolding yourselves and going hit and miss, or is there the idiot's guide to power independence in South Africa?
We are busy writing that out right at the moment. No, what we've been doing is going around with radiation meters and thermometers and all sorts of things to measure inputs, to measure outputs, to measure actual consumption. And really what we're doing is we're saying to people, as you start thinking about this, make sure the equipment that you put in place is scalable. I've seen just in the 3 years since I installed my solar panels how much more efficient they are today than they were 3 years ago. And that's only going to continue. But we believe at some point you need to make the decision to make the investment and to reap the benefits from the go.
Is it a bit like cell phone technology, Inus? I mean, 10 years ago a cell phone was probably more expensive in real terms than a cell phone is today, and today's cell phones have got extraordinary computing power. Is solar the same?
There has been a decrease in the cost of these PV panels as such. The rest of the equipment has stabilized, but has improved in quality a lot, and has become more modular. So the eventual thing is you have to know what your end goal is, so that you can plan your stuff in such a way that they are modularly expandable to your end objective. So the planning thing is critical. I have to get back to that. If you rush into this and you get a quick quote off somebody and buy a couple of panels from somewhere, and you think you're knowing what you're doing, you're most probably going to lose some money.
And this is also the risk, of course, here, because what generally happens in times of crisis, as we are in at the moment, is that the cowboys arrive. They get a bucky, they stick a sticker on the side of it, and off they come. And they come into neighbourhoods, they kit out neighbourhoods, everything works happily for 6 months, or whatever the case might be, if you're lucky, and then it all goes pear-shaped. Is there a way of protecting ourselves against the cowboys?
Well, yeah, you should consult somebody with reasonable knowledge and experience in that, so to at least
So
check
for the guy who
company.
can't wire a plug, how do I test whether the guy who's talking at me, because I won't understand what he's saying, or she's saying?
Yeah, there's always compliance and regulations around electrical installations. So it's a good point to start, is to speak to somebody or a qualified person within the electrical engineering society to assist you with your process. We normally recommend that you appoint a consultant that guides you through the process with an expansive knowledge of the different technologies.
Is there a go-to guide for ordinary South Africans to go to and say, here is the idiot's guide, the process to follow?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of a go-to guide, but there's a lot of people that you can contact and talk to and get the correct information from to ensure that the route that you follow is the correct and would enable you to reach your end objectives.
Where are you in this process now then, Cheryl, in terms of your community clearly would support it? Nobody likes to be sitting in the dark for 2 to 4 hours at a time, twice a day in stage 3 and 3B load shedding, on the verge possibly of a grid collapse. It feels a little bit safer today than it did last week. But that's the trouble, there's massive insecurity, and it's the prime time for you to pounce on this project.
Absolutely, and what we are doing is, for example, working within the guidelines of the Green Building Council. Just on that, for example, in excess, I think, of 80% of our electricity costs go to space and water heating. It's an enormous amount. You know, you've got the right sort of geyser in place, you've got insulation in your roof, you've used technology on the glass on your windows. That immediately will contribute an enormous amount. But as I say, we are working with places like the Green Building Council, with architects in our neighbourhood, with engineers who are looking at technology. There are a lot of people who are giving us very good guidance, but we are finding that bringing it together in a cohesive sense is a challenge, but we're facing it head on, and we believe that we are making some great advances.
I can't wait to see what happens, if it's in any ways nearly as successful as has been the provision of broadband to the suburb of Parkhurst. It's going to be very interesting to watch. Inus Dreckmeyr is an electrical engineer, and Cheryl Labuschagne is chairperson of the Parkhurst Village community. My thanks to you for coming in. Nice to see you both, and thank you for illuminating us this evening. That was an electricity joke. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night and goodbye.